She was just tuning engines, until an elite pilot handed her his helmet and stepped aside. The roar of jet engines echoed through the massive hangar like thunder trapped in a steel cage, vibrating the air and rattling the tools scattered across workbenches. It was dawn on a sweltering summer morning at Edwards Air Force Base, the kind where the desert heat already clawed at your skin before the sun fully rose. Amid the chaos of mechanics shouting orders, hydraulic lifts whining, and the sharp scent of aviation fuel hanging heavy, one figure moved like a ghost in the shadows. Emma Harlan, or at least that's the name on her faded ID badge, hunched over a dismantled turbine assembly, her hands steady as a surgeon's despite the grease-streaked gloves. She wasn't in uniform, no crisp fatigues or squadron patches for her, just a plain gray jumpsuit, the kind issued to civilian contractors who were supposed to fade into the background. But today, something was about to shatter that invisibility. Little did she know, a single glance from a battle-hardened pilot would unravel years of quiet exile and force the base to confront a truth buried in classified files. Emma had arrived at Edwards 6 months ago, slipping into the role of avionics support specialist like a key into a well-worn lock. The job posting had been buried in a subcontractor bid, the lowest one the Air Force could stomach without raising eyebrows in procurement. Her resume was sparse, a few years at a private aerospace firm, vague references to field maintenance experience, and a security clearance that raised more questions than it answered. No one bothered to dig deeper. Why would they? Contractors like her were dime a dozen, temps who cleaned up messes, tightened bolts, and vanished when the real work started. The pilots, those gods of the sky with their aviator shades and egos as vast as the Mojave Desert, barely registered her existence. To them, she was just the girl in the corner, wiping down engine cowlings and sorting through bins of discarded parts. But Emma's hands told a different story. They moved with an intuition honed in places far darker than this sun-baked hangar. Places like the dusty airstrips of Kandahar, where the whine of incoming mortars drowned out the engines, and a split-second diagnosis could mean the difference between a squadron returning whole or in body bags. 6 years in the shadows of Black Ops, Shadow Wing, they called it, a ghost unit that didn't exist on any official org chart. Embedded with special forces, foreign allies, and teams that operated in the gray zones of international law. She'd patched bullet-riddled fuselages under starless nights, recalibrated avionics mid-mission while sandstorms raged, and once, in a frantic blur, jury-rigged a failing hydraulic system on a Black Hawk that saved an entire extraction team. But Kandahar, that was the scar that never healed. A routine check missed, or so the report said, a microfracture in a rotor blade. The chopper went down in flames, taking 2 pilots and a squad of operators with it. Emma had walked away from the wreckage, but the guilt clung like smoke. Retired, not discharged. Vanished into civilian life where no one asked about the nightmares that woke her at 3 a.m., hands trembling as if still gripping a torque wrench. Back in the hangar, the day unfolded like any other. Emma's workbench was a fortress of organized chaos, trays of precision tools, diagnostic laptops humming softly, and stacks of maintenance logs yellowed from overuse. She preferred the night shifts when the base quieted and she could lose herself in the machinery. But today, the brass had called in all hands for a high-priority prep. The Ghost Riders, an elite fighter squadron from the 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron, were rolling in for a desert deployment simulation. Their F-35 Lightning IIs were beasts, stealthy supersonic predators loaded with classified tech that could turn a battlefield into a graveyard from miles away. But deserts were unforgiving. Sand-infiltrated seals, heat-warped composites, and the relentless sun played havoc with sensors. Every jet needed a full overhaul, and the lead mechanics were already barking assignments. "Harlan! Grab that auxiliary power unit from Jet 7, it's acting up again," shouted Staff Sergeant Mike Torres, the hangar's grizzled overseer. Torres was a lifer, 25 years in, with a mustache that could hide secrets and a voice like gravel under boots. He tolerated Emma because her work was flawless, but he didn't trust her. "Civilians," he'd mutter over coffee. "They don't get the stakes." Emma nodded without a word, wheeling over to the problematic F-35 parked in Bay 3. The APU was a nightmare. intermittent power surges that no one could pin down. Other techs had poked at it for hours, cursing under their breath. Emma slid underneath on a creeper, her flashlight cutting through the shadows of the underbelly. Her fingers danced over the wiring harness, feeling for anomalies. There, a faint vibration in the fuel line, subtle as a whisper. Not a leak, but a resonance issue from a misaligned bracket. She adjusted it with a custom tool she'd fabricated herself, a curved probe that no standard kit included. 10 minutes later, the unit purred like new. As she emerged, wiping sweat from her brow, the hangar doors groaned open. In rolled the Ghost Rider's convoy, sleek jets gleaming under the fluorescence, trailed by pilots in flight suits that screamed Top Gun. At the head was Captain Alex Reynolds, call sign Viper. Tall, with sharp features etched by years of G-forces and a gaze that could lock onto a target from 30,000 feet. Reynolds had flown everything from F-16s in Iraq to experimental drones over Syria. His father had been a legend in Vietnam, a wild weasel who dodged SAMs like they were raindrops. Alex carried that legacy in his blood, and in his helmet, a battered relic customized with mission tallies and a faded eagle decal. No one touched Viper's gear. It was sacred, maintained by his hand alone. The squadron debriefed quickly. "We're simulating a full op in the Nevada test range. Sand, heat, evasive maneuvers. These birds need to be bulletproof." Reynolds scanned the hangar, his eyes lingering on the mechanics. Torres assigned teams, but one jet, Reynolds' own, tail number 001, had a ghost in the machine. Erratic thrust vectoring that kicked in during high G turns. "It's like she's got a mind of her own," Reynolds said, patting the fuselage. The lead techs dove in, diagnostics running hot. Hours passed. No fix. Frustration mounted as the sun climbed higher, baking the concrete outside. Emma watched from her corner, not intruding, but when a discarded sensor module landed near her bench, pulled from Reynolds' jet, she couldn't resist. She hooked it to her laptop, running a custom script she'd written in her off hours. Code flickered, anomalies in the calibration data, a software glitch masked as hardware. Simple but overlooked. She fixed it silently, sliding the module back into the parts bin without fanfare. That's when Reynolds noticed. He'd been pacing, coffee in hand, his sharp eyes catching the subtle efficiency of her movements. He wandered over, casual at first. "You handle that like you've seen combat," he said, voice low but probing. Emma glanced up, her expression neutral. "Just doing my job, sir." He chuckled, but there was no mockery. "Job? Most contractors here couldn't tell a thrust nozzle from a tailpipe. You've got the touch." He paused, studying her. Then, in a move that silenced the hangar, he unclipped his helmet from his belt and placed it squarely on her workbench. The helmet, his talisman etched with the ghosts of past missions. "Check the HUD interface. It's been glitchy. And let her finish," he announced to the room, his voice carrying like a command. Heads turned, whispers rippled. A civilian? Viper's helmet? He's lost it. Torres stepped forward, face reddening. "Captain, with all due respect..." Reynolds held up a hand. "I said let her finish. I've seen enough." He stepped back, crossing his arms, his stance unyielding. The hangar fell into a tense hush, tools clattering to a stop. This was unprecedented. Pilots didn't hand over personal gear to unvetted hands. Trust in aviation was life or death. One wrong tweak and you were a fireball at Mach 2. Emma felt the weight of eyes on her. Her pulse quickened, echoes of Kandahar flashing. The chopper's scream as it spun, the acrid smoke, the screams cut short. She pushed it down, focusing on the helmet. She connected it to her diagnostic rig, fingers flying. The HUD was indeed off, micro delays in the augmented reality overlay, caused by a corrupted firmware patch. But deeper, a hairline crack in the visor mount, invisible to the naked eye, but detectable by the faint harmonic she felt when tapping it. She repaired it all, reflashed the software, reinforced the mount with a composite she'd mixed herself. 15 minutes. Done. She set the helmet aside, not meeting anyone's gaze, and returned to her turbine. The twist came that evening. Torres, curiosity piqued, or perhaps ego bruised, pulled her file in the admin office. What he found chilled him. Former Shadow Wing engineer, level 4 clearance, embedded ops, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, retired post-incident. Digging deeper via secure channels, he uncovered the Kandahar report, redacted but damning. Emma hadn't missed the fracture. She'd flagged it, but command overrode her warning for mission urgency. The crash wasn't her fault, but she'd taken the blame to protect the chain. Whispers spread. She wasn't just a contractor. She was a legend in the black world. One who'd saved more lives than most pilots had flown sorties. But not everyone bought it. Enter the first real twist. Lieutenant Kara Voss, a hotshot pilot in the squadron, confronted Emma the next day. Voss was fierce, a rising star with a chip on her shoulder about women in the field. "Heard you're some ghost from the past. Prove it," she sneered, tossing a faulty radar array onto Emma's bench. "This thing's fried, keeps ghosting targets." The challenge was public, drawing a crowd. Emma worked under scrutiny, but as she delved in, another layer emerged. Sabotage? No, a manufacturing defect, but one that mirrored an old op where enemy hackers had tampered with Allied gear. Emma not only fixed it, but added a countermeasure protocol she'd developed in the field. Voss tested it later in a sim. Flawless. Grudging respect bloomed. Reynolds, meanwhile, sought her out privately. "My old man flew with someone like you in Nam. Said the real heroes fix the wings so we can soar." He shared his own scars. A near miss over Syria where faulty avionics nearly ended him. Their conversation deepened the bond, revealing Emma's internal struggle, the guilt that kept her silent. "I stepped aside because I saw it in your eyes," he admitted. "That fire doesn't lie." The base shifted. Pilots nodded in passing. Mechanics consulted her on tough calls. Torres installed a custom rack in her corner. Reinforced alloy engraved with "Let her finish." On it hung Reynolds' helmet, a beacon of trust. But the final twist? A week later, during a live exercise, Voss's jet hit turbulence, sand ingestion threatening shutdown. Emma's mods held, the plane stabilized. Voss radioed back. "Thanks to the ghost in the hangar." Emma smiled faintly, hands steady on the next repair. In the end, respect wasn't shouted from cockpits. It was forged in quiet corners, one fix at a time. Emma Harlan remained the enigma. But now the base knew. Sometimes, the strongest leaders don't wear wings. They build them. And when they step aside, it's because they've seen the truth that saves us all. The hangar at Edwards Air Force Base wasn't just a building. It was a living organism, pulsing with the rhythm of America's aerial might. Spanning football fields in size, its massive doors could swallow squadrons whole. And inside, the air was a cocktail of jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and the metallic tang of overheated machinery. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows that danced with every movement. On this particular morning, July 16, 2025, the base was abuzz with anticipation. The Ghost Riders were coming, and everyone knew what that meant: perfection or bust. Emma Harlan arrived at 0500 sharp, her pickup truck rumbling into the employee lot under a sky still dotted with stars. She parked in the far corner, away from the flashy Mustangs and Jeeps of the military personnel. Her vehicle was unassuming, a 2012 Ford F-150 with faded paint and a toolbox in the bed that held more secrets than tools. She grabbed her lunch cooler, peanut butter sandwich, apple, thermos of black coffee, and headed in, badge swiping her through security with a beep that echoed her isolation. Inside, the night crew was wrapping up. "Morning, Em," called out Javier, a young airman first class who was one of the few to use her name. He was wiping down a workbench, his uniform crisp despite the graveyard shift. "Torres left a mess for you. Jet 4's got a hydraulic leak that's stumping everyone." Emma nodded, her response a quiet, "Got it." She wasn't one for small talk. Javier had tried once or twice to draw her out, asked about her weekend, her family. She'd deflected with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What could she say? That her family was a series of classified ops where bonds formed in foxholes and broke in debriefs. That her weekends were spent in a tiny apartment in Lancaster, staring at walls while memories played like bad movies. She set up at her station, a 10 by 10 alcove partitioned by tool cabinets. It was her domain, organized to military precision with every wrench, socket, and multimeter in its place. Labels handwritten in neat block letters, a habit from her days in the field where chaos reigned but preparation saved lives. The hydraulic leak on Jet 4 was straightforward, a worn O-ring compounded by pressure fluctuations from recent test flights. But as she worked, her mind wandered to the past. Flashback. Kandahar, 2018. The airbase was a fortress of sandbags and razor wire under constant threat. Emma was 28 then, fresh from advanced training at Wright-Patterson, recruited into Shadow Wing for her uncanny knack with avionics. The unit was elite. Engineers who deployed with spec ops, fixing birds on the fly. That night, a CH-47 Chinook was prepped for a night extraction. Emma inspected the rotors, her flashlight revealing a hairline crack in blade 3. "Pull it," she radioed to command. "It's compromised." The response crackled back. "Negative, mission critical, patch and go." Orders from above, some colonel safe in a bunker. She patched it, but her gut twisted. The chopper lifted off into the black, carrying a team of green berets. Minutes later the call came. "Mayday, mayday, rotor failure." The crash lit the horizon. 8 dead. Emma was debriefed, cleared, but the blame stuck. She requested transfer, then retirement. "Not your fault," her CO had said. But faults in war weren't always official. Back in the present, Emma tightened the new O-ring, tested the pressure. Perfect. She logged it in the system, her entry concise. Replaced seal, calibrated, operational. No flourishes. As the morning shift flooded in, the hangar came alive. Mechanics bantered about last night's game. Pilots strutted in for briefings, and the scent of fresh coffee mingled with oil. Then, the Ghost Riders arrived. Tires screeched as the transport pulled up, doors opening to reveal the jets, F-35s with matte black finishes, radar-absorbent coatings that made them vanish on scopes. The pilots disembarked, helmets under arms, flight suits zipped tight. Captain Alex Reynolds led the pack, his presence commanding. At 38, he was a veteran of 3 tours with 2,000 flight hours and a Silver Star for a daring rescue in hostile airspace. His call sign, Viper, came from his precision strikes, fast, deadly, unseen. "Listen up," Torres bellowed, gathering the team. "These are the best of the best. We're tuning for desert ops, full sensor recall, engine stress tests, weapon bay alignments, no shortcuts." Assignments flew. Javier on avionics, a team of 4 on fuselages. Emma got the overflow, problem parts from the initial inspections. Reynolds approached Torres. "My bird's got a thrust issue. Vector's lagging in turns. Fix it right or we're grounded." "We'll handle it, Captain," Torres assured. As the day wore on, the hangar heated up, literally. Temperatures hit 105 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and inside it was a sauna. Sweat dripped, tempers flared. Reynolds's jet proved tricky. The thrust vectoring nozzles were misfiring, diagnostics pointing to everything from software bugs to mechanical wear. The lead tech, a burly master sergeant named Hale, threw up his hands after 2 hours. "It's ghosting us. Might need factory reset." Emma overheard, her curiosity piqued. During a break, she slipped over to the discarded nozzle assembly left on a cart.
She examined it closely, running a vibration test with her portable analyzer. There, a subtle imbalance in the actuator bearings, caused by sand residue from a previous test. Not obvious, but deadly in flight.
She cleaned it, balanced it with shims she'd cut from spare composite, and placed it back, unnoticed. Or so she thought. Reynolds had been watching from the catwalk above, his keen eyes missing nothing. He'd seen her efficiency, the way she handled tools like extensions of her body. It reminded him of his father's stories, about a mechanic in Vietnam who fixed a shot-up Phantom with duct tape and prayer, saving the squadron. He descended the stairs, helmet in hand. The hangar noise faded as he approached her bench. "You, what's your name?"
"Emma Harlan, sir."
"You just fixed that nozzle, didn't you?" She hesitated.
"It needed balancing."
Reynolds nodded, a spark of recognition in his eyes. "My HUD's been flickering. Augmented display lags by a millisecond. In dogfight, that's eternity." He placed the helmet down, its visor reflecting the lights. Then louder, "Everyone stand down on my gear, let her finish." The words hung in the air. Hale froze mid-wrench. Javier's jaw dropped. Lieutenant Voss, nearby, crossed her arms.
"Captain, she's a contractor. No offense, but—"
"Offense taken if you question my judgment, Lieutenant," Reynolds snapped. "I've flown with the best, and I know talent when I see it. Step aside." The tension was palpable. Whispers spread. Viper's gone soft. What's her deal? Emma felt exposed, the weight of Kandahar pressing down. But she worked. Connected the helmet to her rig, ran diagnostics. The lag was from a firmware conflict with a recent update. Easy fix. But the visor crack? That was deeper. A stress fracture from a hard landing. She repaired it with epoxy resin blended for aerospace specs, then recalibrated the entire system. When she finished, the hangar was silent. Reynolds tested it on a simulator rig. "Smooth as silk, better than new." He clapped her on the shoulder. "Thank you." That night, Torres dug into her file. The revelations hit like a missile. Shadow Wing, Black Ops, commendations buried under redactions. He confronted her the next morning. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Words don't fix jets," she replied. But Voss wasn't convinced. Twist. She challenged Emma publicly. "If you're so hot, fix this radar. It's seeing ghosts." The array was from her own jet, plagued by false positives. Emma dove in, but as she worked, she uncovered something alarming. Not a defect, but a potential cyber intrusion trace. Code remnants that echoed Russian hacks she'd seen in Syria. "This isn't random," she warned. "Call CyberSec." The base went on alert. Investigations confirmed. A test hack from a Red Team exercise. But Emma's catch prevented a simulated breach. Voss apologized, her skepticism turning to admiration. "You saved my ass before I even flew." Reynolds pulled Emma aside later. "My dad served with shadow types, said they were the unsung. What happened in Kandahar? It wasn't you." How did he know? Twist. He'd pulled strings, read the full report. "Guilt's a heavy payload. Drop it." The base transformed. Mechanics sought her advice. Pilots shared stories. A custom rack appeared. Let her finish, with Reynolds' helmet displayed. Emma continued her work, but now with purpose renewed. In a world of high flyers, she was the ground that held them up. Days blended into weeks, but the incident with Reynolds' helmet became legend. Hangar talk revolved around the ghost mechanic, and Emma found herself at the center of it all. Javier became her unofficial ally, bringing her coffee and defending her to skeptics. "She's legit, man. Saw her fix a fuel pump blindfolded, practically." One afternoon, a storm rolled in from the desert, rare but fierce. Lightning cracked, wind howled, and the base grounded all flights. In the downtime, the squadron gathered for an impromptu briefing. Reynolds took the floor. Team, we've got an asset here most don't recognize. Harlan's not just turning wrenches, she's saving lives. He recounted a story from his Syria tour, a drone strike gone wrong due to faulty sensors. If we'd had someone like her, things might have been different. Voss, now a convert, chimed in. She's teaching me avionics tricks I never learned in academy. Emma blushed, uncomfortable with the praise. Just doing what needs doing. But the twists weren't over. A week later, during a night exercise, Voss's F-35 reported engine anomalies mid-flight. Viper, I'm losing power. Sand in the intake? Radio static crackled. Reynolds in the control tower turned to Emma, who'd been called in for support. What do you think? She reviewed the telemetry. Not sand. Compressor stall from that earlier mod. Wait, no. It's the bearing I balanced. But... Her face paled. It's the same signature as Kandahar. Panic surged. Was it sabotage, or her past haunting? She guided Voss through emergency procedures via radio. Feather the throttle, bank left, ride the stall. Voss landed safely, the jet intact thanks to Emma's quick thinking. Post-flight inspection revealed a supplier defect. Nothing sinister, but Emma's expertise averted disaster. Reynolds confronted her privately. You froze for a second there, Kandahar? She nodded, tears welling for the first time in years. I can't let it happen again. You didn't, and you won't. He handed her a squadron patch. Funny, the best pilot on base never left the ground.